I just want to say welcome event for June. Today's topic is sales automation. So we're going to be going through some of the features and that kind of thing around sales automation today, and some of the newer features that have recently been dropped down from the enterprise level to the pro tier on HubSpot as well. So we've got a few things to cover off today, and looking forward to kind of working through it all with you. Okay, so let's share screens. Okay, that looks like the right one. Very good. Actually, we'll close that one. All right, let's try that again. Okay. Very good. All right, let's move to slideshow view. Okay, there we go. Good. Hopefully everyone is able to see the screen there. Very good, very good. All right, well, let's get started. So welcome everyone to our Hug event. We're happy that you can join us today, either live or on the catch-up afterwards. Firstly, though, let's get to know each other a little bit. Some of the people who are on the call today. Just a couple of questions. If you guys could just drop it in the Q&A section, that'd be great, or in the chat, I should say. But the first question I have is around what industry you're in. This question here really is about just so that we can kind of get an idea of what industries people are in, and making sure that the content today is going to be relevant to those industries. So we'll wait a couple of minutes for that. Okay. All right, so it looks like we have digital marketing represented so far. Okay, kind of roll through on that. The next question I have here is more around what sales tier people are using. Today we are talking about some features that are available at the starter level, some of which are only available at the pro and enterprise levels. So it just kind of gives just a little bit of information on that front there. Okay, so enterprise, so that'll be, it looks like we have people on enterprise, still waiting to hear back from others, but perhaps they can get back to us as we're kind of going through the Hug today. So here is the customary plug slide. So my name is Rabina. I am the digital marketing manager here at Refuel Creative. I am responsible for leading our team to deliver projects for clients, whether they be websites, marketing strategies, ad campaigns, SEO projects, sometimes good old-fashioned graphic design, and also we also do offer video, Google Ads, technology consulting, but mostly, most important of all, particularly in today's context, we're also HubSpot partners. We are also award-winning HubSpot partners. We also partner with Google, Meta, and Microsoft. And our most recent achievement has been named the top 25 fast-moving companies within South Australia. So pretty excited to share all of that with you today. But let's kind of move through into what we're actually covering today for the what we're covering in the session. We are talking about playbooks today. We figured it was something that was important to cover off, particularly since they're now available at the pro level as well. We're also going to talk about defining deal stages and how important that is, and also to look at some of the tricks and traps and pitfalls to avoid as well in our work as HubSpot onboarding specialists. We certainly have come across in previous projects and current projects some of these sort of stumbling blocks that can impact a successful implementation. So we'll kind of work to address those today. We're also going to talk about lead routing and how you can automate that. And then finally, we will talk a little bit about the HubSpot quotes and quote-based workflows. I know some people have a love-hate relationship with HubSpot quotes, but I promise you they have improved probably since you've last looked at them. So that's what we're covering off today, and that'll be the focus for today's session. So first up, playbooks. Playbooks are like a script for your sales call. Make sure you don't forget to ask a question. And ultimately, you can give your team the know-how to guide them towards closing that deal. So if you're running in an organization where you've got a very experienced sales director or sales manager, and you're starting to build out the team with some more junior, less experienced sales team members, or people perhaps who are just new to the organization as well, playbooks can be really helpful because as the senior sort of sales lead, I should say, you're able to create and customize those based on what sales processes have worked for you, and then the team can just follow them. So it's a really, really great tool, and what's even more exciting is that it's available now to people on Pro. It's always been there at the enterprise level, but more recently has come down to the Pro level, which is great for anyone on HubSpot Sales Pro. So playbooks can be used for call scripts, sales plays, useful information. So, for example, if you always are compared to another product in the market or another brand in the market, having some information there around why your service is better, even if it's just got the sort of the text for the team to draw on and follow, can be really useful. You might even also develop a playbook that just has frequently asked questions, questions that are asked by people often. So it wouldn't be a hug if we didn't actually get into the platform itself. So I've got a few examples to show what we're talking about today. So we're going to just switch over screens there. So I'll just swap over the tabs. All right, there we go. So I've taken the liberty of putting together in our enterprise test portal a sample deal. It's got a sample contact in there. We've also set up some playbooks on the side here. So when I say I'm on the call with the prospect, we're having a chat about a few different things. I can use this to open up the playbook. The playbook then has, okay, well, these are the things that you need to ask on that discovery call. And then I can put in my notes here. So in this particular case, the test contact here is the founder of LeadJet. So it might be, okay, well, LeadJet is a SaaS that helps you to bring your leads from LinkedIn to HubSpot, for example. We also, when you're setting up these playbooks, you're also able to add some prompters or some quick prompters in here. So it might be that you are able to look at the person and who you're talking to. In this case, it's the director. You can then also put in some additional notes as well. But having these prompters here can also help your team to sort of be more consistent in how they're labeling people as well. You might decide to ask them about goals. And again, these sort of options can help to prompt your sales team and what they should be following as they're having the conversation. And then finally, you might be asking about challenges. So it's a fairly standard kind of pro forma for what you might cover in a discovery call. Now, an interesting thing you can do with playbooks is that you can actually have, so you've seen the different types of questions we've got here. So here's a generic sort of just open text field question and answer. There's also the question and answer version where there's some shortcut answers that you can select when you can select multiple at the same time, as well as putting in additional notes. And then the final kind here is if you're able to actually update properties within HubSpot from the playbook itself. So say, for example, we were having the conversation and it kind of comes out, okay, well, actually, we've got a hard deadline of August 4 to solve this issue. So you can pop that in over there. Budgets that are available, it might be, okay, well, we're going to have, say, $25,000, for example. So then you can kind of wrap up the conversation, again, put in some kind of scripts language here as well, and then kind of take it from there. What we're going to see in a minute is once we click log call on this one, you can also select the outcome. So in this case, it would have been connected, otherwise we wouldn't be able to get the information. Once you've logged it, you can then drop that in there. And what we should see is the close date up here being updated automatically, the amount being updated automatically from the playbook itself. And then following on from that, it then logs the details against the call activity as well. So it's a pretty powerful tool there to really help the sales team to help guide them through the process. So it's pretty exciting from there. Okay, so I might just flip back to the presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll kind of address them as we go. Happy to do that for sure. All right, let's go back. Just do this window here. That'll be fine. Very good. So I'll just jump across over here. So the next thing we'd like to talk about today are defining deal stages. So this is ultimately about thinking about what's going to happen at each stage of the deal in your pipeline. So we're talking about, what happens when you first make contact, what happens during the discovery phase, what happens, are there any other stages that need to happen before a proposal is sent? When a proposal is sent, what happens after that? So it's about really thinking about, what your ideal sort of sales pipeline should look like and what the deal stages then need to be within them. So this HubSpot sales, like the pipeline and the deal stages, can be customized to support your specific processes. And that's something that we've helped a lot of our clients do. We do have an example of a plan that I do want to run through with you. And this kind of just gives you a bit of an idea of some of the detail. In this particular case, we, kind of work together to find, I'll just zoom in on this a little bit more so it's a bit clearer to see. But we actually give some consideration to marketing and what happens, to the person when they're contacting the CRM. It might be that they've just signed up to be a subscriber at that stage. Might interact a few times and then we, automatically make them a marketing qualified lead, at which point it might be, okay, well then once that's sort of in the system, it might be then tagged, depending on the lead score, for example, Okay, well, this is actually one that's ready for sales to do an outreach. At which point, it may become an SQL before it actually enters the deal pipeline, or in some cases, it may be that you, as part of the deal pipeline, that's actually recording the first stage of when the sales team actually have made contact with that particular person. So that's certainly something that can be looked at, and it really just depends on what your specific processes are. We've had clients where they'd like to be able to track, when a prospect is contacted as part of the deal stage, because if they're seeing a lot of prospects come in and then go straight to close lost, then they know that there's something wrong with the pre-qualification process before sales reach out, or there might be something else that's going on as part of that vetting beforehand. The main thing from here then is to look at the, I might just, raise the first column. So as we sort of move along here, and work through the deal stages, it might be, okay, well, there's an appointment scheduled. We've used most of the standard ones here. We then look at what the customer lifecycle stage should be at this stage. There's a lot of planning and thinking around what needs to happen and what and where, because we do find that, particularly with the customer lifecycle stage, when we're engaged to work with a client, sometimes that hasn't been updated in sync with the deal pipeline. And as a result, when you go to look to see how long it takes to become from a lead to a customer, the data there isn't always reliable. So when you're looking at this, it is important to consider how this kind of works out. Again, we look at, okay, well, what are the conditions to enter this stage? It might be, okay, well, the contactors have booked a first appointment meeting. If that's the case, then, you certainly can look at setting some automations based on that. Looking at what happens, what needs to happen on the platform. Also thinking about if there's any notifications that need to be sent, any tasks that need to be sent, any reminders. That's the kinds of things that we look at as we kind of go through these. Because when you sit down here and work through the sales pipeline and work through what should be happening, even as you kind of look through to the service area afterwards, it really gives you a strong idea of, okay, well, this is how I know we need to set up our HubSpot now. So it's worthwhile taking the time to work through these bits and pieces here. I'm just going to jump back here for a minute. Very good. Alrighty. Some of the tips and tricks that we have for defining deal stages, one of the big things is don't overcomplicate it. We have seen in our work with some of our clients, when we've originally looked at what deal stages they wanted to include, they have been up to 20 or so, where some of the stages aren't really stages, and perhaps they're more appropriate to be considered under the customer lifecycle stage, or alternatively, it may be that they are should be, it should just be a task that reminds someone to do something, rather than a deal stage being used to act as a reminder to take action on something. The other tip we have is to spend time to get it right from the outset, or get help if you need it. We have seen in some portals when we've done audits, situations where the sales pipeline has just kind of been set up and, without a ton of planning necessarily, or they've been set up in the past, but they haven't been reviewed to match the change in sales processes and things like that. It is really important to take that time at the beginning to set it up well, and make sure that it does match what your intended sales processes are. Something else to keep in mind is how scalable your approach is. So we've had experience in the past where we've come up with a fairly comprehensive automated way of kind of moving deal from stage to stage. But in some cases, our clients are preferring to manually manage that in the first instance. When you've only got, maybe 10 deals in the system and you're just starting out with HubSpot for sales, manually kind of assigning the deals or the leads and things like that can be done because you are working at a smaller scale. The expectation, though, is that you are going to be successful in what you're doing with your sales activities, and that you will start to see more leads come in either through marketing or through sales outreach. And as a result, you are probably going to see an increase in the deals created, the leads being generated, and having someone being the keeper of all things isn't going to be, necessarily the best approach there, because it will get to a point where it'll be beyond their capacity to do it. They'll be tied to 3 different roles or something like that, perhaps, or they might just be the default person who's responsible for it. But with those types of things, we'd recommend looking at ways to automate those shifting between the deal stages where possible. So as a result, the next sort of tip there ties in directly to that scalable one around thinking about how you can automate some of the transitions between deal stages. If consistently you've got to see, a signed quote, for example, to move it from proposal sent to closed won, or an expired quote, we'll send it to closed lost. Those sorts of automations can really help and keep your pipeline nice and tidy. The benefit of that being that when marketing are involved, if they can then, if they're able to know, okay, well, this person was a closed lost for this specific reason, and they fell off, 3 months ago, then, that we can now enter them into a nurture sequence that we've tailored specifically for that kind of person. So it is really important to keep your deal pipelines tidy in terms of the closed won, closed lost sort of areas there. And then finally is just a reminder there not to forget about the life cycle stages. The life cycle stages are what HubSpot used to measure how long it takes someone to become a lead, to go through to being a customer. I think as a salesperson, knowing the length of the sales pipeline is always useful, particularly when you're looking at trying to meet your KPIs and things like that. Trying to know, okay, well, I know it's going to take on average at 6 months to close a deal from, the time that they come in as a lead to the time that they actually are a closed won client, a client that we've won. I know on average it's going to take 6 months. From there, you can then kind of, get more accurate forecasting and then kind of take it from there. So that life cycle stage property is critical. What's been pretty exciting though is that the customer lifecycle stages only within the last month or so are now fully customizable. I know that for long-term HubSpot users, this has been something that people have been asking for ages and ages and ages. And finally, they have actually brought it through for everyone to use. So you can now customize the customer lifecycle stages, and it doesn't matter what plan you're on, whether you're on starter or if you're on enterprise, you're able to do it. So here's a quick peek behind the scenes here of the lifecycle stage. So it's what you can find it in your settings, and then you head to objects, contacts, and then once you're here at contacts, it'll come up here. So if I just click that one there, and then move through to lifecycle stage, which with the bold flashing new label, you won't be able to miss it. So this is something that you can now start to automate some things in here. So set the lifecycle stage. So what you've set here. So when a contact is created, what lifecycle stage should they be at? So you can set it to any of these: lead, subscriber, etc. When a deal's created and when a deal is won. So ultimately, these are the metrics that we want to see. What you can now do is add in extra stages. So I know for some people, who are in the sales field, HubSpot sometimes has a difficult time of identifying people as a poor lead or a bad lead or a spam lead or something like that. So now you can actually head in and add that as a customer lifecycle stage rather than having to use your own customized type thing over there. That might be an example. You might decide that, putting in a bad lead option there so that you can then report on it. Or poor quality lead, or however you'd like to term it, that'd be, perhaps that might be an opportunity to add that in. So we'll discard that for now. So ultimately, it kind of depends on, whether there are extra stages. You might have some, people who are subscribers. That might be one way of starting. It might be that you want to track, you want to have a stage where they're a student or something like that, perhaps, or, because they're enrolled in your academy or something like that. So there might be some other stages along the way that kind of get them through from being a lead through to a customer. But that opportunity to customize is finally available. Okay. Moving on to lead routing. So these are tied into workflows, available on Pro and Enterprise. I have noticed that Starter is now doing there are some basic sort of automation workflows you can do from the form itself on Starter now. So there are some opportunities to kind of route the leads directly attached to the form, but they are very simple in comparison. So for today's session, we are really going to look at the workflows to automatically assign leads, so some of the more complex versions. You can do this based on any of the data that you collect about the person prior to them being engaged by sales. So these sort of lead routing activities are really designed for leads that have come from inbound marketing activities. Whoops, go back, skipping a few there. Back into HubSpot we go. So this is one that we've put together specifically for today's session. So we've set the triggers as, okay, well, they've enrolled on the sample Contact Us form page on any page, and we want them to have at least viewed one page. Following on from that, it might be the case that they are, we want to check if there is a contact owner. So if for some reason they are a client who has decided to contact through the website using the Contact Us form, it might be that, okay, well, if they actually already have a contact owner assigned to them, we probably just want to send that notification to that person if that person already exists. So we've put in this if then branch just to capture that in case there's that eventuality. If the contact owner is unknown, we've then now set, these are going to be based on industry. They're going to be sent to specific people. So in this particular case, we've checked, if the industry is accounting, we're going to assign the property, the contact owner to Ollie, and then whipping back up here to send that internal email notification to the contact owner now that we've actually got that person assigned to the contact. Similarly, you can have up to 20 of these branches on if-then branches. So if you've got, more than that, then you probably need to look at perhaps setting up it might be another workflow to capture the others, but it can get very convoluted and complex that way, and kind of goes against what we were saying around trying to keep things simple. So if we kind of go across here, we've said, okay, well, if it's any other industry that isn't these ones here, then basically we just want to rotate that contact between the three contact owners, because anyone can pick up that lead. It's just whoever's turn it is. So, this is a fairly simple version. In the presentation, we showed a mini map for one of the ones we've put together for a client who's got very complex requirements that we have to account for geography, geographical location, because they're a global, they service a global market, but then also what type of sort of inquiry it is as well. So it was certainly one of the more complex workflows we've built in terms of lead routing. In case you haven't seen this before, this is the mini map, which I feel is a great addition to HubSpot, particularly if you do have a very complicated workflow, because then you're able to kind of see the different bits and pieces there and what's going into what, and see it on a grander scale. You can then also use it to zoom in and that as well. That's like a little bonus thing there. Okay, might kill off some of these ones here. So some of the tips and tricks, again, mapping out the criteria that you're going to use to route the leads is really important. So making sure that you understand, okay, well, this is what information we want to use to route the leads. For example, you might have sales teams who service different regions of Australia. So in which case, okay, well, we need to make sure that any inbound leads we get, we need to capture the postcode or the state, so at least we know which person who can follow up the lead once they're ready to become someone who's contacted by sales. Then ensure that that information is collected so that prior to sales making contact, so that when you go to make those workflows, you've actually got that information sitting there. Set up alerts to managers if the lead hasn't been followed up in X days. So if there is a sales process that says when you're assigned a contact, you are required to contact that person within 2 working days. When you set up the task to remind them to do it and send the email notification, if the task is overdue, which might be 2 days later, you can then set up an alert to go to the manager, and that might be an email notification, it might be an SMS, just depends on what's more relevant to how that manager would like to receive those notifications. Operations Hub Pro can also be useful for really complex lead routing scenarios as well, so that's another one to keep in mind. And then the final one, and this is probably universal advice for all workflows out there, test, and more. Because once you turn it on, if something isn't behaving as you expect it to, then it can certainly lead to a bit of confusion with the team, and that's certainly something that you'd like to avoid the first time around. So testing as much as you can is critical. Okay, so we might just take a minute here and see if anyone has any questions. Feel free to drop them in the chat. Happy to answer as we go along. Okay, so let's bring this one back up. So we're kind of coming towards the end now. So we've got here customized quote templates. So one thing that you can do on Starter with customized quote templates, you can customize the quote in that you can, make sure your brand colors are applied, you've got your information in them and that sort of thing. But in terms of making the quotes look more like proposals, that's a feature that is limited to Pro and Enterprise. So this is all about making your quotes look like slick proposals and to, more importantly, cut down the time it takes to generate proposals after you meet with a prospect. So we're going to just do one I prepared earlier. Here we go. So we're back on our same sample deal where we've used the playbook. We've got some information here. Based on, the conversations, it'll be a case of, all right, well, let's add in the products that they might need. So we'll look at the product library and we'll grab a couple of services there. Save that. Oops. Okay, that's fine. So create quote. So off we go. So there are the basic, modern, and original. Those are the standard ones that come with HubSpot. But what we've done here is we've taken the opportunity to create a proposal template here, which actually pulls in, essentially uses the CMS that sits in HubSpot to create beautiful looking proposals At the moment, we've just put up some lorem ipsum text in for the moment, but ultimately it will take information from the deal, pop the information into the proposal, and then kind of give you a really strong framework to work with. So let's kind of move through. So if we click through on here, and again, all the way through, you can also use the e-signature as you would in a normal quote. You can also use your payment options if you have those enabled. And then finally, at the end here, what you'll see is a template. Now, one thing that is a limitation of this particular way that HubSpot treats it is that if you want to edit anything in here, that's not something that the quoting tool will support at this stage. So if you have, for example, a proposal that is based on Google Ad Services, for example, you might have a version of the proposal that just has Google Ad Services. If it's a HubSpot onboarding one, you might have a version that just has HubSpot onboarding services and so on. So it really just depends on how what kind of information needs to be in there. It may be that you end up with mostly generic kind of information, but this is what will be sent when you send the client. When they open it up, this is what they'll see on their screen. So if you've got a product offering that's fairly generic each time, then this could be a really strong solution for you, particularly if you're trying to bring some extra sort of flair to your proposals and yet still pump them out in record time. As you can see here, we've got the project estimate. So the quote is buried in here. It's pulling in the product information, the product details. I forgot to add tax to this one, so there's no tax on this one. And then also the verified assigned project acceptance sits in the bottom here. Okay. Now that we've had a quick look at customized quotes, it's now time to kind of have a look at some of these quote-based workflows that are available to people who are on Pro and Enterprise. Again, this is another feature that recently seems to have dropped down from just Enterprise down to the Pro level as well, which is very exciting for people on Pro. But ultimately, it basically means that you can set actions to happen after a quote is approved. If you are using Slack as a team, or even if you're using Teams, you can send notifications to those platforms to notify people if a quote is signed off. For our use case, we would send a notification to our traffic or production schedule Slack channel so that the operations manager is aware and knows when that this quote's been signed off. So we need to start onboarding the client, start briefing the team, and make sure that we book in those kickoff meetings. You equally can add, SMS or email notifications if that's how your team better respond to notifications. The other thing you can do is, obviously because it's sitting in a workflow, if you've got marketing, so a paid marketing tier attached to your HubSpot, you could then also automate sending out that first welcome or onboarding email. So again, it's been very workflow heavy today. But again, we've got here a simple one where the quote approval status was setting to approved. First, we want to check if they're an existing customer. So if the quote is associated to a deal and the deal type is existing business, in that case, it's a matter of, actually, we just need to notify someone that the quote's been signed off, so that someone needs to go and make sure that the team are ready to action it. But if they're not an existing customer, if the deal type is not existing business or is unknown, then we need to send them some onboarding materials. This is something that we're still working on automating ourselves, but it's essentially the same email goes out every time. we're making use of those templates, that's for sure. So, you know, it's an email that says, you know, welcome to Refuel Creative. Please complete our client onboarding form. We'll look forward to kicking off the project with you, and so on and so on and so on. We then set a delay here, and if they haven't opened the email, if they have opened the email and they've, you know, looked at it, then, you know, it's probably time that we can kind of start moving ahead and building out the work. But if they didn't open up the email, then we probably need to notify the quote owner that, hey, this person hasn't actually hasn't opened the onboarding email, so you probably need to manually follow them up with a phone call or a personalised sales email. So again, another example of how we can use, you know, those quote approval statuses. With our experimentation in this space, we have already found that there's a few tricks and traps. One thing is that we've discovered not to rely on the e-sign date property. If you rely on that property alone, when you create the quote, you must, as the creator of the quote, you are essentially, I think, signing the quote without signing the quote. You know, you are, what was I going to say? So it basically will just automatically do it. So it'll automatically say move the quote to the close one part of the stage of the deal pipeline. It'll then notify everyone, oh, hey, you've got a, you know, new client, new work, or new projects come on board. But then when you go back and check on the actual quote, it hasn't been approved. So that e-sign date property is a little bit finicky, I think. So probably best not to rely on that one. As we said before, test your triggers, make sure they're accurate, and use the quote sign off or the approval status as the trigger to send tasks to your project management system. Let people know that they need to raise the invoices, and so on and so on and so on. If you have Ops Hub as well, there's probably some other things that can be done there as well. If you want to know more about workflows, we all highly recommend the Workflows Deep Dive course. It is available on the HubSpot Academy. It takes you about 45 minutes to an hour to complete, but it really is a worthwhile use of your time, particularly if you're looking at doing more and more with workflows, because, yeah, it really just focuses on workflows, how to use them, best practice and all that kind of thing. And if you need to know more about Sales Hub in general, we do strongly recommend that you look at the Sales Hub certification, which is a longer time investment than the deep dive course, but it is a HubSpot certification, which you can throw up on your LinkedIn, of course, if you so desire. But also it really does take you through the details of Sales Hub and what is possible within the platform. Even if you've done it before, it's really worthwhile doing as a refresher, because as we've seen today, there have been some changes to Sales Hub with some new features coming on board, and then also just new features being available to people that perhaps didn't have them previously. So we'll just kind of sum up some key takeaways, and then I think we'll shift over to questions. So some of the key takeaways: spend time mapping your sales pipeline. It's really important to get that bedded down and on paper, because once you've done that, it's much easier to translate that into what it means on HubSpot. Workflows are your friend. Get to know them. Do the Workflows Deep Dive course. Build out your sales playbooks in HubSpot so that all of your team can be as effective as the most effective sales person on the team. Save time when you use quote templates. So that's probably one of the biggest pros there, is that, you basically put in your products, the line items, you generate the quote, you might put in a few notes, you put in make sure the GST is added or the taxes are added from wherever you are. And then, you're pretty much done. You saw it kind of all happen fairly quickly when we were on this hug today. So, might just flip back to see, are there any questions today? Okay, here we go. Can you use integrated quote software like PandaDoc in a quote-based workflow? That's something that I haven't seen. So the quote-based workflow is purely based on the HubSpot quotes. You would be using PandaDoc typically associate the information of where things are at with the contact property, if I'm not mistaken. So you probably would just use a contact-based workflow to do that if you were using PandaDoc or any other third-party proposal tool. Are there any other questions? Okay. No worries. All right. Well, on that note, we might give ourselves an early minute or so. Thanks for joining today. And if you're joining us on the catch up, hope you have learned a few things about automating your sales processes using HubSpot. Thanks, guys.